SCP-5135, also sometimes called the War That Never Was, is an anomalous worldwide military conflict involving at least 4 major world superpowers that did not occur between 2009 and 2017. However, despite the fact that this war objectively did not happen in our reality, the Foundation has collected a vast cache of evidence for its occurrence. This evidence exists in a variety of forms, including documents, radio signals, photographs, and fragments of digital data such as images and communications, all of which have been received and collected intermittently since the year 2011. Foundation researchers have theorized that all this evidence has somehow been anomalously transferred from a parallel reality, where this global armed conflict actually did take place. While initially, the Foundation was able to glean very little information about this conflict, this changed as more and more evidence trickled in. We'll discuss this further later on. However, since the very beginning, the Foundation was able to gather 6 key pieces of information about the war. First was the definitive confirmation that the war involves 4 global military superpowers, and that 2 of these were the United States of America and the People's Republic of China. Second, the war involved a high level of espionage and cyber warfare. Third, this is one of the few conflicts in the past century to spill over into US soil, with the conflict starting there in 2010 and skirmishes continuing as late as 2014. 4. The US and at least one other major belligerent in the war made use of widespread misinformation campaigns to confuse the enemy and their own citizens. 5. Since at least 2016, the conflict has involved nuclear engagements. And 6. It's possible that the SCP Foundation is involved in this war. Another key piece of evidence is SCP-5135-1, an undetonated but active nuclear bomb resembling a Soviet RDS-202 hydrogen bomb or SAR bomb. Its estimated yield is approximately 97 megatons, making it a formidable weapon. SCP-5135-1 is locked in a temporal stasis field, meaning it's frozen in time, and presently hovers 104.6 centimeters above the ground in Rancho Corral de Tierra, California. The origin of the stasis field is unknown, but it's speculated that the field was created by the Foundation or some Foundation equivalent in this alternate timeline. While the payload appears still to the naked eye, testing indicated that SCP-5135-1 retains its momentum and kinetic energy. The Foundation fears that any direct interaction with the bomb could cause it to detonate. There also appears to be an inscription on the side reading, "The Family's Lost, Kauai, Hawaii, December 24th, 2012. The next line is unreadable, followed by North Carolina, March 12th, 2016. This one's for you. From the evidence received over the years, Foundation researchers have been able to theorize a rough timeline of the events of SCP-5135. The inciting incident came just after the tragic 2008 Sichuan earthquake. The United States sent emergency relief, which, as it turned out, was contaminated by a biological agent, causing an outbreak and an unknown number of casualties. Hostilities began in 2009 when Chinese spies somehow discovered that the emergency relief was intentionally contaminated by the US in an attempt to weaken China. After a tense series of standoffs throughout 2009, that November, a third superpower entered the arena, positioning themselves as an enemy to China. The US denied any kind of affiliation to this new combatant, but conflict continued to escalate. In 2010, troops from an unknown fourth superpower landed on the east coast of the United States. In 2011, the world was beginning to feel the stress of the rising tensions. Representatives from the European Union expressed a desire to see the conflict de-escalated in a closed-door meeting, but this sadly didn't seem to have any effect. In the summer of 2012, military forces attacked Hawaii and set up a military installation on Kauai. Naturally, the United States tried to reclaim the territory immediately by laying siege to the base. However, this didn't work, so by Christmas Eve of that year, the US took drastic action. They carpet-bombed the Kauai base, causing an untold number of civilian casualties in the process. The US considered the bombing operation a success, but the public did not see it in the same way. By early 2013, the US government was deep into a disinformation campaign, downplaying their involvement in the Kauai tragedy to dampen civil unrest about them bombing US civilians. Records are pretty spotty over the next 3 years, but by 2016, there's a nuclear attack on US soil, turning this new Cold War red hot. Later that same year, an aircraft with a nuclear payload is shot down over Italy by unknown aggressors, resulting in catastrophic loss of civilian life. No evidence was found after this point, and it's likely that either the war ended or the world did. Some of the collected evidence of SCP-5135 shows a world sleepwalking into a self-destructive war, one attack or diplomatic fumble at a time. The first piece of evidence, Inventory Code 5135E-1, is a corrupted photograph of a typed document suggesting a planned assault on China in 2009. The next piece of evidence, an audio file with the inventory code 5135-E-2, shows an employee of the US government that same year talking about the country's rapidly souring relationship with China. One chilling quote from the transcript reads, "Well, the Secretary of State already said we're disavowing any relationship with them." A heavily redacted memo with the inventory code 5135-E-3 shows early US knowledge of the military installation created by the invading forces in Hawaii. Perhaps the most disturbing piece of physical evidence of all is another audio file, labeled inventory code 5135-E-5, showing the last moments before the devastating nuclear incident in Italy. The audio is a correspondence between Italian air traffic control based in Rome and the operators of the nuclear-armed American bomber plane traveling through Italian airspace. The conversation shows the confusion and miscommunication between the two parties, eventually resulting in Italian defense forces shooting down the plane. The last words before the recording cuts off are a panicked exclamation from the air traffic control operator. He says, "Oh Jesus, it's nuclear. Oh God, it's so close. It's..." The statement then abruptly ends. You can guess what happened next. Considering this war that never happened poses no real possibility of containment breach, it's earned the rare but welcome classification of safe. It also has a relatively low risk category with caution, the second lowest of all classes in this category, meaning according to the official Foundation guidelines, the anomaly in question has a moderate risk potential. Individuals nearby will likely experience the effects of the anomaly, and these effects may cause discomfort or harm. However, it's also important to note that it also has the Level 4 secret classification, meaning information about SCP-5135 can only be accessed by Foundation staff at Level 4 clearance, which is the second highest level of clearance available. It also has the formidable Level 4 a.k.a. disruption class, meaning it has a high potential to disrupt the general population. Disruption is typically widespread, affecting major metropolitan areas or countries. The containment priorities of this particular SCP are twofold. First, Foundation employees are ordered to capture and suppress any evidence pointing to the idea that the SCP-5135 war actually did happen. They're also required to track down anyone who claims to remember the events of the war and deliver them amnestic treatment followed by a psychological exam. Second, are the containment measures needed to secure the undetonated SCP-5135-1 nuclear device. The Foundation has secured a 1-kilometer radius around the Golden Gate National Recreation Area, in which the temporally frozen explosive resides. This area is marked off with physical security, fencing, and security personnel. The bomb itself is encased in a doorless concrete sarcophagus, measuring 10 meters by 10 meters, with cement walls more than half a meter thick. But these procedures are merely to protect SCP-5135-1 from exterior forces and, to quote from the official file, will offer no mitigation of destructive impact in the event of detonation. Finally, in hopes of making this whole mess easier to understand, the Foundation brought in Dr. Voigt, a theoretical physicist who specializes in temporal anomalies, to assist lead researcher Dr. Delkirk on the SCP-5135 case. In an anomaly that raises so many questions, it's only natural for the Foundation to want some straight answers. Dr. Voigt had a wild theory, one that deeply concerned Dr. Delkirk. Voigt asked Delkirk if he truly had hard evidence that the war hadn't occurred in our reality. Delkirk said that the mere fact that he hadn't heard about this major war proved it hadn't happened here. In response, Dr. Voigt asked him if he would have known about the war in Iraq if it wasn't for media coverage of the event. Delkirk said no. Voigt wondered if this was a similar situation. Delkirk began to toy with the idea that perhaps the war itself was an anomaly, an anti-memetic war, impossible to remember and report. Dr. Voigt believed the explanation was much simpler, and it all came down to one sentence in the containment procedures of this very file. Physical evidence supporting the existence of the events of SCP-5135 are to be secured and archived. In other words, Dr. Voigt believed that the war of 5135 isn't happening in another timeline. It's happening right here, right now, and the Foundation is covering it up. But of course, because the Foundation is very good at its job, we'll never know the truth either way.